Hello there, welcome back to the channel. My name is Myro, and today it's time for a review of the brand new Opeth record, The Last Will and Testament. I got an early review copy, so I had a couple of days to listen to this album in full, and now it's time for me to share my thoughts and my feelings about 14th overall studio album by progressive death metal band and progressive metal band Opeth. This is the longest gap between albums since In Cauda Venenum was released back in 2019, and this is the first album featuring death metal growls since Watershed, so it's like 16 years. And this is the first concept record as well since Still Life. I mean, Ghost Reveries in a way was supposed to be a concept record as well, but it still retains some of it, but it's not a full concept record as Still Life was. So in a way, this marks like a fresh start or a new beginning for the band because many fans were thrilled to hear that the death metal growls are back. And for the record, if you watch my video on Opeth's discography that I uploaded recently, you know what are my feelings towards the new Opeth records for the most part. Um, and I don't mind um, Opeth doing music without death metal growls. I mean, they've done Damnation, and I love Damnation, and you know that I rated really high. The thing that bothered me the most with their newer records, especially the first three after um, Watershed, it was missing that Opeth essence from the previous records, and they were being overshadowed by that progressive rock 70s ethos. So I kind of missed Opeth being Opeth, and in a way, they redeemed themselves with In Cauda Venena. I think that album is a great representation of what I expected from Opeth doing progressive rock from the 70s. So it contains the Opeth essence from earlier records, and it contains the elements of progressive rock from the 70s, even jazz elements as well, and I think they nail it. The production on that album is kind of questionable, but I still appreciate In Cauda Venenum a lot. So this album, on the other hand, The Last Will and Testament, I saw reviews stating that this is a masterpiece, you know, one of their best albums ever. Well, I have to disagree. I think it's a very good record. It's a great record, even, but is it a masterpiece? No, it's not. Um, it is a step in the right direction for sure, and it is a continuation of sound from In Cauda Venenum with added death metal growls. Obviously, there are still elements from albums like Watershed and Ghost Reveries, but for the most part, as I hear it, it is In Cauda Venenum with death metal growls. And like I said, this is the first concept record, full-blown concept record since Still Life. This time around, this story is set in post-World War One era, so 1920s, and telling a story of a wealthy family and their patriarch, conservative patriarch, whose last will and testament reveals some shocking family secrets. There are some twists and turns happening throughout this story, but I won't spoil that for you. Anyway, near all songs on this record start with a section symbol, which is like reading of a will. So 7 tracks that are labeled like section 1, section 2, up until section 7, and there is only one song with an actual title, and that is the closing track, A Story Never Told. I think this whole concept and story was executed really well, especially with the added narration from Jethro Tull's Ian Anderson, who obviously played flute on 2 of the tracks here, section 4 and section 7. But I think his main contribution to this whole record is actually the narration. He provided the voice of the lawyer reading the will. We have Joey Tempest from Europe, who provided backing vocals on section 2, which might be one of my favorite tracks from this whole record. It kind of segues directly from section 1, and it's really heavy, in your face kind of track. I mean, it starts off that way, then it shifts to a more mellow part. I mean, it's quite dynamic for only 5.5 minutes long song, and I think Joy's vocals paired with Ian Anderson narration in particular, and Michael's growls obviously kind of added to the overall atmosphere that sets the tone for this kind of story they were telling. It is quite melodramatic and theatrical even, and I think it works for the sake of the story. This story is definitely not as tragic as nearly as tragic as Still Life story was, but I think for what they were trying to achieve, they nailed it. Section 3, I was kind of maybe harsh towards that song on my review. Now, when I listen to it in full as a part of a whole record, I think it is actually a pretty good song and one of two songs without any harsh death metal vocal. I think there are some nice instrumental passages on that one. So yeah, it's still maybe my least favorite on this whole record, but I think it's actually a pretty solid song overall. Section 4 is the one that we have a nice flute breakdown in the middle, mellow part. Two of my favorite tracks are Section 5 and Section 6. Section 5 is really interesting song, full of dynamics. It changes constantly. It has that kind of a Middle Eastern kind of riff throughout. There's it's really, really theatrical. Section 6 starts off with drums, and I have to mention that Valtieri or Walt did fantastic job on this whole record, especially on this track. And interestingly enough, this that beginning intro riff of the song kind of reminds me of a Deep Purple song, especially when that keyboard comes in. It's a really unique song in their discography, in my opinion, especially that beginning part. This whole drama and the reading of the will culminates in section 7. This is the last song where Anderson delivers his reading of the will, where some secrets are spilled. It's a quite evil sounding track. It's not as theatrical maybe as the previous two, but it's still really effective in telling the story. And it's appropriately climactic to finish this whole record with that song, but this is not the last song on the record. The closing track, the actual closing track, is the only one with the title, and I think it's the most fitting song to close this whole record, and that is A Story Never Told, which is completely different than the rest of the record. Sound wise, tone wise, mood wise, it's peaceful, and compare that to tragic story of Still Life and that ending, tragic ending. This one ends peacefully, and it's fitting conclusion to this whole drama and family intrigue. This is one of the highlights from the record for sure, especially that outro solo. Frederick did amazing job here. It is a simple song. There's not much going on apart from Mikhail's beautiful voice and simple piano melody accompanied by acoustic guitar. I think this whole fusion of different genres like 70s progressive rock, death metal, blues, and jazz was executed here really well. I especially love the string arrangements on this whole record. It feels never boring. I mean, something is always happening on these songs, even the shorter ones. There are a lot of dynamic changes. Like I said, on one hand, you're listening to brutal death metal. The next thing you know, you're listening to some nice piano passage. Overall, I think this is a great record, and I usually rate, 1 through 5 stars, but I'm gonna change that now, and I'm gonna rate this one as 8.5 out of 10. It is a great record. It's not a masterpiece, but it's a step in the right direction. And yeah, thank you very much for watching. And please like, share, subscribe. The usual YouTube jazz. And we'll see you in the next one.